here in this video, we will discuss a cartoon movie, animated movie, Croods, the Croods. It's about family of cave people. And we will tell you about metaphors and things we saw in this movie, and we will be happy to see and to hear from you what you saw there, what you noticed there.
I wanted to say that we will be talking mostly about character journey, especially Grug, right, which is the father. And this movie is actually available on Netflix. I will put in the description under this a link where you can watch this. So
we will talk about character journey, but it's one part of this amazing movie. And for me, for us, we saw it not only as a character journey of one person, but also as a metaphor of what is happening inside of each of us, as a relationship of our inner family. Like all family of Croods is metaphor of our inner family, and we will talk about this too. So for me, the biggest lesson from this movie was that it shows that ability to go through life lessons and to let life events flow through us is it depends on our ability to regulate our inner family, and it shows us how one can lead to other. Like before, we could just suffer from life events, especially from unwanted life events, and we can actually transform our inner family, our attitude to life and to events, to make whatever happens with us, even if all world gets destroyed, into life experience which enriches us and which makes us wiser, more loving, more
courageous.
Yeah.
And I think this is what Dr. David Kruder calls about, positive harvesting, that you harvest all the bad stuff that life gives you and make it into powerful internal transformation.
Yes. And this is our choice. Our choice to take events as lessons which gives us wisdom and love, or to take life events as something which gives us trauma. This is how we make this choice. This is the biggest lesson or wisdom of this movie, and let's start talking about it. Let's go to the next slide.
Okay.
So the first metaphor, what I see in the movie, of course, its main character, Grog.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a made-up name.
Yeah.
I think it's Grug.
Because Grog rhymes with hug.
Yeah, it's Grug.
Yeah. So the first thing we can see that we can remember people who are like him. It could be our parents who behave the same way, or our boss, or somebody. It can he could remind us somebody we know. But the other and the most important metaphor for me is the inner figure. Somebody inside us behaves like this caveman. Somebody inside us wants to go to the cave and hide there and take care only of survival needs and tell us that everything other than survival needs is excessive and we don't need to do that, and everything new is dangerous.
Yeah, so it's basically any part of us that is afraid of growth. And what I felt about Grug is that he loved the known. Whatever that was unknown was super scary and was basically illegal. Like in his mind, it was illegal, it was taboo, it was a bad thing you should
It
ever
was
try.
not only in his mind, it was rules which were on the wall of the cave.
Mhm,
Everything new is dangerous.
mhm.
Being outside of the cave after dark is dangerous. Being and everything. Of course, these rules were written by blood of people who died. But the thing is, and this is what Eve saying in the beginning of the movie, that everything what is fun or interesting is bad. But all these rules were written by ancestors, and then something happened, world changed, and they didn't have rules on the wall of the cave for this change.
Yeah, I think this is really the key that Nadia brings up. It's rules. Like the rules are essential for that part of us, that or for those people. That's why when we don't follow rules internally or externally, um, our own internal group or external group wants to just like kill us, wants to stop us. It's and it's he's doing that to protect us. That's the thing. These rules are created to protect everyone. They're not there to like for no reason. They're there to survive and protect.
So when we analyze arc of character, we always think about what is false
Belief.
belief of the character about the world or about himself. And Grug has false belief about the world that everything is dangerous, and his false belief about himself, which will be transformed in the end of the movie, is that I don't have brain. I have only physical strength, and this is enough. We don't need brain.
That's actually brilliant because yes, one of the things that you when you see the movie, you see Grug identifies himself as something, right? The protector, which needs to be basically strong and not smart or not clever or not intelligent. And this is also, to me, this can be something that happens to people where they identify themselves as something and they can't step out of being that. And they're terrified of being identified as something. And as Nadia is talking about it, this is also interesting because internally we have these ways that there's a part of us that becomes the head of our council, becomes our internal group, that part shapes and decides and determines what we will be and what our life would be like.
Yeah, and I would add some details like when we have these beliefs, these caveman beliefs about ourselves, it usually doesn't manifest that uh, I have only physical strength and I don't need brain. But I feel it's metaphor of fight, flight, freeze reaction we have from our caveman ancestors. And this reaction to whatever event we have is our uh, first first go-to mechanism, which we even don't learn it in childhood. We just have it from birth, and it gives us the first confidence that we can avoid danger and that we can go
Survive.
to pleasure. So it's kind of reptile reactions. And for me, this false belief, like I don't have brain, I have only physical strength, is that belief that my fight, flight, freeze responses is enough for me to live. This is false belief that we don't consciously think about during our life, but a lot of us is keeping it, that actually our life doesn't have events cave people were exposed to. We are not exposed to any life threatening
situations.
in to any real danger usually, but we take social situation as dangers and we react on social interactions with fight, flight, freeze, and we bring this caveman response to the situation where it's not needed anymore.
I just want to add to that I would say we don't even do response, we do reaction. We learn to do reactions, and we learn that the reactions are God. And we learn that, as Nadia said, fight, flight, freeze, disassociate, freezing, all these things that we do as reactions are the only way to be, which what Nadia brilliantly said, what that means is that what we end up being, we are ending up to being a reactionary robot, basically, that is not using their consciousness. And guess what? Okay, well, maybe a reactionary robot would do well in situations where, we're scripted and you do X, then X happens, you do Y. This happens, A happens, you do B. Okay, fine. That is, but what if something happens which is you've never experienced? What the hell are you gonna do?
There is no rule for that
right.
on the wall of our game.
Right, like, but the hell are you gonna do then? Where are you gonna go then? Like, if a monkey attacks you, you do this. If they're bothered, whatever, then you have all these rules. It's perfect. But if something comes completely out of that book, and you have basically brainwashed yourself into believing that you can only follow these rules. What if something happens which is outside that rules? What are you going to do? And this is why this movie is so interesting, because it's an exploration of that what if. The part that most people never even want to consider existing, this movie explores with that and playfully sees that, okay, what happens when you don't have rules? Then what?
And one more metaphor I liked, that movie starts in one landscape and finishes in other, and this difference of landscapes shows transformation which happened during the movie. So the first landscape in the beginning is just rocks and cave and desert, like nothing is around. And it finishes on the beautiful beach with lots of trees and fruit and animals which are the pets. So this kind of difference from where they are starting and where they are coming
finishing
from. Yeah, this is also very rich metaphor.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the cave is a beautiful metaphor of so many things. One of them is closeness, like something which is closed, which is dark, which is old, which is basically past its time. It's just, and then going to the beautiful beach. And it shows you the movie, as Nadia says, it shows you what happens if you just follow the rules. This is the best you can do, and this is, you will be in this, there's an expression, it's like you will be basically dying of survival in your little cave, and maybe you'll survive, and then you'll have another generation that survive, but you'll always be inside that cave. That is gonna be the best possible solution in your life. There's nothing ever going to be better than that. And then the other one is that, hey, you're in a beach, in a beautiful sunny beach with trees and animals and ocean, and you can do whatever, and you can explore things. And guess what? You have no rules. And guess what? You may die, but at least you are experiencing life.
And I like the last line, which it is saying behind the scene, that our world is still cruel, but we will be okay because we changed the rules which were keeping us in darkness.
Yeah, and then the rule is that you get to a point in your consciousness, and when you do enough healing and inner work on yourself, you discover that the only rule is that stay conscious, stay open, and when something happens, don't follow. And guess what? The thing about rules, the problem with rules is that if A happens, do B, well, guess what? Sometimes the A that you think is the A is not what you think it is. And Bill will talk about the tiger, right? That how.
No, we will talk about tiger later.
But what I'm saying is that the problem with rules is that not always what appears is what's actually happening. Therefore, your reaction to what appears, although you're following the rules, is not the right thing to do.
Yeah. So let's go to the next slide. And I want to speak more about the figure of Grog, which is, for me, it's our inner protector. When we work on our inner family system, we can see different figures of inner protectors. They could be inner critic, they could be
inner child.
No, child is not protector.
Okay, you're talking about protector?
Yes, I'm talking about protector.
Okay.
So they could be inner critic, they could be just inner parent, they could look in different ways. So Grug is perfect image of inner protector. And in the beginning of the movie, he is saying that this family had died, this family died. Only Croods survived because of my father, because he is strong and because he is following the rules on the wall of our cave. And for me, this figure of inner protector and rules on the wall of the cave, it is what we got when we are born, because it is imprint of our parents, both mom and dad or whoever was taking care of us, and imprint of all rules they made us follow to not get in trouble as a child, as a very young child who is dependent on their parents in everything. And we learn these rules, that you should obey to adult people, you should not do this, you should not do that, this is dangerous, this is bad, this is good girls or good boys don't do that. And our parents were gods for us as children, as toddlers back then, and we write these rules deep in our consciousness. It was important at that time. It was important for our survival as children, and our world was as small as that cave, because it was maybe our place where we were living, and maybe a little bit outside. We couldn't go too far. It was forbidden to go too far from the house. So it was limited. It was limited space, and we lived in limited space, and we had to follow that limited rules. And it was right for that age, for that time, for that level of our development. And whatever happened outside, when we were young children, we didn't have to deal with that. That's why we didn't have rules how to deal with changes. We had rules only how to live in our small world, which is not changing. Nothing is our responsibility there. We take it as an unchanged reality where we have to do the same thing over and over again and just keep ourselves safe, and that's all we know. And this cave is metaphor of this childhood. And when cave is falling apart, for me, it's metaphor of life. Like we are going out, and this cave we grew up in does not exist anymore.
Yeah, so Dr. David Gruder calls this, we are all using survival mechanisms. So with what Nadia was saying, imagine as children, like a 6-year-old or a 7-year-old or an 8-year-old or a 5-year-old, we have to, we either explicitly learn from our parents these rules, right, that are actually literally written in some wall, and we have to follow them, or we have to make them up to survive. Doesn't matter. Either way, these are the survival mechanisms that we came up with to survive up to age 10, 12 to 18, whatever, as long as we are living in that thing. But guess what? The moment we leave our house, the moment we leave our parent is basically the moment we are leaving that cave. And the survival mechanisms, the set of rules that we came up with to survive in our parents' house, either explicitly told to us by them or figured out by ourselves at looking at our world, all of that goes out of the window, all of it. And what we end up with is continue living our life with the rules that either dumb parent told us or we came up with for the rest of our life.
Let's go to the other slide because I prepared the picture there. Yeah, this is the reason why we usually don't confront our inner protector. This is really interesting because in the movie we see the scene of like breakfast routine, which is actually 1 meal in 3 days. And they do huge work to find an egg, and finally the father is the last one who is trying to eat, and he did the most of work and he didn't get any food. And he says, he doesn't show any sign of disappointment, and he says, that's not a problem, I ate last week. So this is the thing why we trust our inner protector, although his rules are already outdated and don't work, but we still trust him because we have unlimited belief that he cares about our well-being more than anything else. He cares about us in everything he says, in everything he is trying to force us to do. It's all for our well-being. Therefore, sometimes his rules and his things he is trying to force us to do may be even ridiculous, but we cannot confront him because we have this deep core belief that he's taking care of us and it is all for our own good, as JP always says.
Right, and that's where things get a little bit tricky because this idea of greater good for outer good, not only we do it with our inner parent, we also do to our outer authority, whatever authority that is. It's so easy for us to believe and accept that, oh, big brother or whoever is doing what they're doing for the greater good. And it's so easy for us to accept that everything is done for a greater good, which then, what does that do? That does, okay, well, the inner protector is going to take care of this. I don't need to worry about it. Or the other protector is going to. So this creates a situation where responsibility, any kind of responsibility over our life, becomes a burden. And if it is internally, then your inner protector is going to take care of you. And it doesn't matter, he has all these rules, but that's great. So you don't have to actually be alive and conscious and responsive, because the inner protector is taking care of it. An outside protector or whatever, big brother or authority is gonna take care of you. So then, hey, don't worry about it, because as Nadia said, this picture so beautifully says, oh, that they don't care. They only care about the protectors, inner or outer. All they care about is everybody's greater good.
Yeah, and this is the most important detail, that they are self-sacrificing for your good. And this detail removes your critical thinking about it, removes your critical attitude. If somebody is self-sacrificing for me, it means that they are taking care about me. And when we were children, we couldn't take care of ourselves better than our parents. When we grow up, we can see that our parents not always were right, and they didn't do right choices sometimes, and it could be done better sometimes. And but when we look at our inner protector, we usually look with the eyes of a child who is still looking on the parent, who is still looks like God, who is not able to make any mistake.
And the little sacrifices that we need to do, or the little freedoms that, again, we need to lose externally or internally, it's all worth it. Because compared to what they are doing, we are just being basically selfish little brats. What the hell do you want? Like, this person has given up on so much, or this part of you has given up so much to give you everything. And all you need to do is just follow a simple set of rules and not really indulge on things. And this is interesting because you look at every political system or every religion, and it always, it's that for the greater good, you need to sacrifice, because these people, these benefactors, these humanitarians, these philanthropists, they're doing everything they can do. And then it just makes you be ashamed of yourself. Like, oh my God. And as Nadia said, it also takes away your critical thinking, because the idea of thinking critically and the idea of questioning the narrative, internal or external, becomes something which is super selfish and ugly.
Yeah, now let's move to the conflict with nature. So the first conflict our hero is going into is conflict with nature. And as we already said, that this cave represents our world, the world of our childhood, which never changed. So this distraction nature puts on the cave is actually life, which happens with us all the time. And our little cave of our childhood is not there anymore. And every day something happens in our life, and life brings us events, big events, small events. Every day life brings us changes, and we need to not only react to the changes, we need to let life flow through us. We need to learn to digest experiences, what life brings to us, to take the best part of it, and to be able to live our life better and better every time. But what happens when we have inner protector as the head of our inner family, which is like make totalitarian regime, and everybody has to obey to inner protector, and nobody has word. And so what happens is that inner protector, what he did in the movie, he was denying that cave is not there anymore. So when cave was destroyed, when it just fell apart in front of him, he took the stone with print of palm, and he was trying to put it together. Like if he will put it together, cave will be recreated. And when they saw beautiful world behind the cave, they said nobody is going there because there is still hope. These ruins of the cave are here. Maybe they somehow will build themselves up into old cave, will somehow come back. And this is what happens in life of people who have inner protector as a main figure in the inner family system. They cannot accept changes, and even when change already happened, they are still denying it. Like, what if somehow it will disappear? What if I will leave and this cave will recreate itself in some miraculous way? And people are not living relationships which are already dead. People are not living work which is already dead. And we had it in Russia. Sometimes it was after Soviet Union fell apart. In some places, they didn't pay salary for more than 12 months. Like in the military plant where my father was working, they didn't pay salary for more than 12 months. And people kept going there and working the full day and didn't change anything. Because if I leave, what if it will go back? And I left.
This is interesting because there are people who immigrate to America or Canada from China, from Iran, from Russia, from wherever. And they're living there for like 30 years and they haven't learned the language, they haven't dealt with the culture. Like, the hell are you doing here then? Like, and then if their child wants to go like dancing or like, I don't know, do something, and they freak out because everything about that cave becomes sacred. It doesn't matter what that cave is. And this is, I think they call it Munchausen something syndrome, that people sort of get used to their position of slavery, their position of being in prison, and they kind of just kiss that ground that was their prison. And they're like, that's another aspect of a cave. A cave is a prison, right? It's basically a prison. And here's freedom, and Grug didn't want the freedom. He wanted to make sure that he can put back the cave, the prison. And the idea of going back to that free, beautiful, interesting world was insane to him. It's basically the whole idea of sin. If you look at religions, politics, this idea of thinking different ways from any aspect, even if you talk about science or technology, every time somebody brings something out which is outside the cave that everybody's been living in, everybody hates them, everybody attacks them, everybody becomes a little Grug attacking them.
Yeah, it reminds me, I don't want to go there, but it reminds me also Woman in the Sand, Japanese author, Abe Kabo, if I pronounce it right, when man was caught in the sand hole and was kept there against his will, but after some time of living there, he had an opportunity to escape, but he already didn't want to. So this is about inner protector, and we have inner child. Yeah, we have inner child there, and this figure of spontaneous child, because we have two figures of inner child there in the movie, but first let's start with spontaneous child. And in our inner family, this spontaneous child brings spontaneity to our behavior. It connects us with our desires, with our interests, with I would say that spontaneous child is something who we came here to be in this life. We came here to express it. But for adequate expression of our spontaneity, we need figure of inner adult, because this spontaneous energy is unlimited and it's very wild. It's maybe I would not want to go to Freud and stuff, but it's connected to what Freud called id, I think. So we need a strong inner adult to shape the expression so it will be acceptable in the outside reality, because when we express it too wild and we got negative reaction, it puts us in a self-shaming position, like I cannot be accepted for who I am. So this energy needs two components. First, inner adult, but the second also it needs inner protector, because it needs enough of safety to go out, to come out, to be expressed. And when it feels in danger all the time, it becomes shy and we lose connection to our inner power, to our inner source. And sometimes, I mean, not sometimes, but pretty often, inner protector shames this inner child so much that he becomes the main source of danger for inner child, not something from outside. And this energy is actually powerful. And I think I have a lot of this, I had a lot of this in my past, that this energy is so powerful that when you suppress it too often, sometimes it just comes out
unintentionally.
Yeah. And you just doing things you didn't expect yourself to do. I can say this is how I moved to Thailand. I just was sitting working, and I felt I'm so tired. I'm so sick of my work, and I opened new tab. I bought tickets to Thailand one way. I closed the tab and I kept working. And it was my flight was in 2 weeks.
Wow.
And I never came back. So when we don't accept this power, this force inside of us, when we don't know it, we can make weird, unpredictable things which put us in lots of discomfort and troubles, because on one hand we cannot stop ourselves from doing that, on other hand we don't know what to do with all these consequences which follows after we are doing that.
So I want to say a few things about this. Number one is that what happens is that, as my coach used to say, every time you want to be playful, everyone, which Nadia is talking about spontaneity, it's that sort of crazy part of us that wants to enjoy and wants to live life and all that, that needs an external fence around it. That external fence is the parent, the inner parent, the inner protector. Otherwise, the thing about inner child is that she is very vulnerable. She's not very good at taking care of herself. She's not very good at predicting what's going to happen. She's not, but she's so good at flowing. And this is almost also has to do with feminine energy and masculine. And so you need a protective region around the part of you which is playful. You can't put that playful side right out there without any protection, because it would get hurt, it would get in trouble. That's one thing I wanted to say. The other thing is that Nadia talked about the relationship between the protector and the inner child. When I did my inner child therapy work with my therapist more than 20 years ago, after all the work I did, I discovered I had this inner child, and I was driving my car literally. And I discovered when I was driving my car, what I did to my inner child was I took my inner child, tied his hands, and blindfolded him and put him in my trunk. And that's how I lived my life for 30 years. I had no life. I had no experience. I had no passion. And until I actually started bringing my inner child and putting him in the next my seat, that's the biggest spiritual work I did with my inner child. I talked to him and I said, hey, I'm so sorry what I've done with you. From now on, you're gonna be sitting next to me, and we're gonna excuse me, we're gonna be experiencing life together. And then the other thing that Nadia said is that this reminds me of Jerry Seinfeld. Jerry said, he would say, hey, I'm gonna go out and party till it's 6 a.m. And then, yeah, but the other part of me says, dude, you what the hell are you doing? You have to go to work at 10 a.m. And I'm like, I don't have to go to work. That other Jerry has to go to work. Which is like, we have this conflicting parts that people want to do something, but then the other part of them says, hey, what are you doing? It's like, I don't care. It's your job to take care of me, this is why people, unfortunately, a lot of times in the Western culture, by drinking and partying and just losing their mind, people need to blow steam, but then the next day they have to pay for it, because they're these parts, the inner child and the inner adult who's going to go out there and make the money or have the job or pay the bills, they're not connected. They hate each other.
Mm-hmm. And let's skip to the next slide. I want to talk about how this power interacts with outside world. In the movie, we can see that the girl, when she sees fire, like it was this huge stone or rock, which her father was covered the entrance in the cave, and her father is big man with lots of muscles, and he was like bringing it with effort. And then when she wanted to go out, when she saw the fire and she was fascinated by light, and she was dreaming about sun, and then she is seeing this light, and she moves this rock herself, a girl. This huge rock what her father was moving with effort. So this is how this force can be powerful when it's attracted to something. There is no any obstacles on the way. And I experienced it with improv, with when I got an opportunity to play improv, I felt that I'm just driven by this force, and there is nothing what can stop me. And but the to say negative, maybe not negative, but uncomfortable side of it, we can see in the movie that she grabs the guy and just like lifts him in the air. Whatever she wants, she just grabs it and moves the way she wants. It may be not comfortable for people.
I like to speak about this because you see, the problem is that being a spontaneous child all your life without an adult supervising you and acting on your behalf is pretty much a nightmare for other people to experience, and yourself. I say this because I went to Burning Man for 13 times. I lived in San Francisco Bay Area with a lot of people who were always partying, always children, never taking any responsibility, maybe living in their car, living on somebody's couch, going day by day, going for this party and that party. And it's not, imagine somebody who's always like a cat running after fire and running after that thing and this thing and this thing, and they have, attention deficit disorder. So this idea of the inner structure, the inner, parent, inner protector is essential. These two parts need to work with each other. And I know this because, again, as I said, I lived for more than 30 years I basically was a dead man until I discovered my inner child. Without that inner child, without that inner fire, we are dead people. But if you're just consummated and consumed by that fire and there's nothing left except that playful part of you, which doesn't take responsibility, is not accountable for what she does, then it's not that great either.
Yeah, and we see the transformation of Grog in the movie, and Eve is not actually transformed, but in the beginning we see that she's unhappy, she feels suppressed, unseen, unheard, misunderstood. But in the end of the movie, she is very happy because she got safely expressed.
That's brilliant. Yes.
Let's go to the other slide, because it's also interesting thing about it. It's one more interesting thing about it. So in our inner family, we often have this dynamic between inner parent or inner protector and inner child. Inner child is trying to do what?
Buying tickets to go to Bangkok, that's basically.
It was good move. Inner child is trying to do what they want. Then inner protector always blames. So how it's shown in the movie, when Grug found out that Eve is not in the cave, he went to find her, and he found her, and he's bringing her home, and he's like scolding her like a child, little child, and they are in fight, and she's showing, the guy gave her, how you call it, this thing? Horn, and she's showing it, and they just destroy it immediately. And she's so angry, she started jumping and hitting herself and expressing her anger, and ground cracks between her legs. Not because she jumped, but because world is changing and it is life going through Croods' existence. But what her father says, look what you did, look what you have done. So this what happens often, very often, with real parents and real children, and it happens very often in our inner family, that our inner protector blames inner child and makes stuff up, bringing things which are not connected, and said it's your fault, it's because you were trying to do what you want, this happened. And for example, I heard from one woman that she got a child with some nervous disorder, which is impossible to cure, and it's genetic. And she said, God punished me for having men before marriage. Like people just trying to make stuff up and explain some events, because what our inner protector is doing here, he is trying to find control in uncontrollable things. So if I find in what way it could be our fault of our family, if we will not do it, this uncontrollable thing will not happen.
Yeah, so the interesting thing, the essence of the difference between inner child and inner protector, Grug and Eve, is that Eve is doing things for herself. Grug is doing everything for everybody but himself, right? Which creates this dynamic. Again, this could be internal or external, that the person who is actually taking care of themselves, or the part that is actually thinking, okay, what is that I like, becomes this sinful, ugly part that everybody else blames for everything. And the part that basically has lost their ability, or the people who have lost their ability to actually care for themselves, to see what they need, to actually listen to themselves, we as a society or internally, we turn them into God because they're selfless, they're so kind, they're so, they're so philanthropic, they're this, they're that. And the thing is that, again, this is the two sides, that there is a collective, basically Grug is a collectivist, it's like the collective, what collective wants is the most important thing. And the inner child, the Eve, is that it's all about hair, which is, this is almost like to America versus Russia, right? These different, very different ideas.
Yeah, let's jump to the other slide, because it is exactly what you're speaking about, conflict between Grug and Eve. And for me, the essence of this conflict is that our inner protector was created in our childhood. He was copied, just copied. It was imprint of our main caretaker. And moving to happiness, to self-expression, was not written there. And he was made only as some structure which let's us avoid problems, just not dying. And this was essence of the conflict. It was not life, it was just not dying. Not dying is not equal to life. And when our inner protector sees desires, sees us moving to light, moving to happiness, moving to pleasure, he may even panic, and he is trying to suppress all these desires because it's all excessive. We don't need it to not die.
Yeah, and it's like I said that it's dying of survival. I learned this expression in the movie Sense8. And so many people, so many parts of us are always dying of survival. Like you listen to Nadia's brilliant story that how 12 months people weren't getting paid and they weren't doing anything about it because they wanted that peace, that thing, that survival thing. Because again, the bottom line with this is that survival is about a known thing. There are rules. There are all these beautifully written, old-fashioned rules going from, thousands of years ago to your time, and you follow these rules, and there is this reward you get. But if you do something else, if you think for yourself, if you step outside this hierarchy, if you step outside this structure, then you're screwed. And nobody, we even listened to Jordan Peterson talk about that how, these zebras, that none of them want to be on the outside. None of them want to be stuck out. None of them wants to be like Eve, because most people, most parts of us, we don't want life. People don't want life. They just don't want to die. They just don't want to be in pain. So they just want to find a way to survive sort of quietly without making anybody else upset. That's basically, I remember I had a client once and I said, "What do you want to have?" And he said, "Well, I want to have a woman that wants every day I come home, she says, 'How was your day?'" And I was kind of like shocked. I mean, this is like your greatest expectation of life. So
yeah, I think we will stop here.
Yeah.
And we will start our next video with observation or discussion of what happens to person who suppressed the inner child completely.
Thank you very much for watching, and we'll talk to you later.
Bye.